At Fight Night picks, sometimes you just have to chalk things up to chance, you have to chop things up to luck, and sometimes you just get things absolutely wrong. And I have to say, to start this video off, I don't know what Antonina Shevchenko is great at, and I don't know if she does, and I really have had a tough read on Casey O'Neill coming into the UFC. And let that be known, because for O'Neill, her father, a great striker at the new house, realized I made a mistake in the Shevchenko-O'Neill video. Casey O'Neill's father, Cam, owns Eternal MMA. I just want to throw that one in here. Apologies to them. Let's get back to the video. She comes over to the States. She trains at Extreme Couture. She's billed out of Scotland by way of Australia, and in the UFC, and with the work that she's put in at Extreme Couture, she's looked very good. I mean, against Lara Procopio in her last fight, I had Procopio overwhelmingly. And in the first round, it was looking pretty good. And then in the second round, O'Neill was able to, I don't know if you'd want to say take over, because she was able to really take over and have a lot of success. And then in the third round of that fight, she earns the submission victory. For Antonina Shevchenko, I know she's a great striker. I know who her sister is, but let me back it up a little bit and explain why I don't have a good read on her. Because for Shevchenko, when she fought Ariane Lipski, it was like, oh, you're a good grappler now because you weren't against Chukagian. And then in her last fight against Andrea, it was like, oh, you're that grappler again, like you were against Chukagian. So that's the thing with Shevchenko. I have a hard time telling what kind of a fighter she is, fight in and fight out. She's almost 37 years old, by the way. And for King Casey O'Neill, at just 23, a few days shy of 24, she just continues to get better at her grappling. And while her striking may not, and it's not nearly as polished as Shevchenko's, she has that one X factor of such a good ground game that can really stifle top women at the flyweight division.
I really think she does have that kind of a ground game. I'm not kidding. When Casey O'Neill takes people down to the ground, it's not just her top pressure. It's her ability to pass guard, to threaten with submissions, to threaten with ground and pound. She's a very active fighter on the mat, and that's a really important thing about O'Neill's game. She doesn't just sit and wait for things to come to her. And that's a great attribute that really any contender should have. Go out there and get after it. If Alexander Volkanovski proved anything, it's, hey, when you're on the mat, be active. Because when you're stationary, that's when you can get caught in submissions. That's when things can get dicey. But if you're active, you're throwing ground and pound, if you're making your opponent react to you and not the other way around, you're going to be having a lot of great success. And that's what O'Neill's been able to show off throughout her last two fights in the UFC. And the Procopio win, I think I had O'Neill in that one. I don't remember, but still, I remember the first round in that fight, and I was like, I'm definitely wrong in my prediction. But Casey O'Neill, in what I guess you can say classic Casey O'Neill fashion for a fighter who's 7-0, but when she is able to implement her ground game, it really is night and day. And in Antonina Shevchenko, the inconsistencies are the only thing that has been consistent throughout her UFC career. It has been, yeah, wow, her grappling looks great in one fight, and then it's a massive liability in her next fight. And I just never know what a perfect Shevchenko fight looks like. You know, like if her and Pavel are game planning, what do you think Pavel tells Antonina of, okay, this is your perfect game plan? I would assume it's strike at the outside for volume and then go for your own offensive takedowns. But the issue is that her takedown defense isn't that good, so if other fighters are the ones to initiate the scrambles or initiate any really wrestling sequence, they're normally the ones who are going to end up on top in that scramble, which Casey O'Neill is very good at. And the flip side, too, is Antonina Shevchenko on the feet is not her sister at all. Like, she's not a great fighter at moving forwards. I would say she's a good counter striker like her sister is, but the thing about Valentina is she bounces on her feet, and yes, when you're moving forward, she's at her most dangerous. But if you're going to stand there and wait for her, at least throughout the last little run, she goes out there and gets after it. She will put the volume on her opponent, and I don't really think that's a skill that Shevchenko's really been able to show off in the UFC up until this point. Do I think she's the better striker than Casey O'Neill? Without a doubt. You're not going to get an argument from me there. But do I think that Antonina Shevchenko knows that she's the better striker than Casey O'Neill?
I friggin' hope so.
But that's why the question mark around, because I think Antonina's going to shoot for a takedown at some point in this fight. And that's the problem. If Antonina shoots for a takedown offensively, it results in a scramble. Do you know what a scramble results in? Casey O'Neill in top position. If Casey O'Neill shoots for a takedown, what's that going to do? It's going to force a scramble. And scrambling just isn't something that Antonina's that great at. I think her jiu-jitsu's good but not great. I think her wrestling's good but not great. I just think with Shevchenko, it is all those little weird in-between X factors. The stuff that once Gilbert Burns figured out, he became, a championship caliber fighter, if you will. I just have those question marks around Shevchenko, and if you haven't figured out by 36, almost 37, I wonder if you're ever going to figure that out through your MMA career.
For Casey O'Neill, she chains her takedowns together too. If I don't get it, I'm just going to keep working for it. Almost like Nick Maximov, who came in last weekend and had a back and forth type of fight. I could see that fight going similar to this fight as well. And when I look at O'Neill's overall numbers, she only needed the one, and she got the back against Procopio. It was all over, but she gets 1 takedown there. She gets 4 against Shayna Dobson. And then for Shevchenko, 50% takedown defense. But for Shevchenko, it's been good names pretty well the entire time. She beats Jamie Navarra over on Contender Series, and then it's a win over Jiyeon Kim, a loss to Roxanne Modafferi 2.5 years ago. She beats Lucia Pudzilova, fight of the night, submits her. Then she loses to Kagan and gets completely out-wrestled and out-grappled. Then she out-wrestles Ariane Lipski and finishes her on the ground. And then she loses to Andrea Lee in the second round of their fight. And that was a great submission win for Andrea Lee, too, who, again, is another fighter that I have a really hard time getting a read on. So when I look at the odds for this one, O'Neil opened as a -300. She's a -219 on best fight odds. For Shevchenko, opened a +220. She's a +176. And if we look at the Tapology votes, they're not even close. 828 total votes, 83% O'Neil, 39% by decision, 43% by submission, 12% by knockout. For the 17% that have Shevchenko, 69% by decision. Matt, I've said it and I've let it be known. I still have a hard time picking this fight and let alone capping it and trying to understand. Casey O'Neil, I think her ceiling, top 15, I guess?
Here's the problem. It kind of depends on how she develops her own skills. Let's say Casey O'Neil decides, okay, all I care about is wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I actually think if she just became that kind of a specialist...
The Demi and Maya of the division.
Exactly. She could get into that, like, top 5 category just being a specialist. I worry that, okay, if she does take the time to start growing her striking game more and doing unnecessary strikes, let's say Casey O'Neil decides, okay, I'm going to develop a great kicking game now. Then I would start to be a little bit concerned because that's so far away from what she's naturally talented as. I kind of let the cat out of the bag with the whole scrambles X factor. I really do think that this fight is going to result in a lot of scrambles, and I think it's going to be hard to out-scramble somebody like Casey O'Neil in this division. So I do like O'Neil, although I am a little worried with putting money on it, or I would be, because of how heavy of a favorite that she is, because Antonina is such a question mark.
Yeah, I've got O'Neil in this one too. I think if you just continue to work for those takedowns, they'll find themselves. So for me, I'm going with the Skazi and Casey O'Neil, both of us going with her as well. You're not going to want to miss the end of this card and the middle. At the top, you have Santos taking on Walker in the co-main. You have Holland taking on Daukaus. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.